What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of In the Paint, the first one of the 2022 calendar year. As always, my co-host to break down everything college basketball has to offer is Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good. Sun's out, and knock on wood, I am feeling healthy and fine, and I hope you are too.
Yeah, it's for me personally, I've been able to do the Matrix. I've seen all the memes and doing the Neo backflip or whatever, staying out of it. Yes, and my family's had it, or at least been under the weather. Luckily, I've been able to kind of stay away and at least not pick that stuff up. But the unfortunate, I mean, that's great news, but the unfortunate side of it, obviously, I'm definitely probably in the minority with a lot of that. And for college basketball, we started last week's show off with the COVID, situation, and that's where we're going to start today. Again, it's hard. It's the elephant in the room. It is kind of honestly makes this a little more difficult when we put together the upcoming games because Google does what they can, but it is, if you look at Colorado State's basketball schedule, you would swear they're an NBA team because according to Google, they're playing like every other day because Google can't keep up in terms of what's happening. Now, the Mountain West has been hit hard. They just got two teams off of COVID breaks, if you will. Now, two teams have gone on to it. I'll dive a little deeper into that on the San Diego State side of things, but Raider Jim, it's not just week two that we're talking about this. It's pretty much been frontline news, pretty much, going back to last year. What are your thoughts as we, let's be honest, we're now a little bit uncertain about whether or not we're going to see tournaments, whether conference or March Madness tournaments in March.
Yeah, it's a season in flux, that's for sure. Just today alone, we had 20 games that have been postponed or canceled. I mean, there's games being played, but there are still 20 that either had to be rescheduled, have been postponed, they've been canceled. And checking online before we went on right now, there are 50 programs in pause in men's basketball. That's a big clip of teams. And again, there's no end in sight and there's no science to this. You can't say, well, that's okay, because in 2 weeks, we're going to be down to 30 teams and then we'll be down to 15 teams. And I'll cover it in the West Coast Conference talk, but Gonzaga has yet to play a conference game. So it's just, I'm not sure what the NCAA is going to do. And I don't know, I'm not hearing a lot of what can be done at this time. They're just kind of letting each conference act as its own governing body and making the decisions that way.
Yeah, we've seen that in horse racing, and that doesn't always, when you go state to state, you can go 50 miles east, west, north, or south and get a different set of bylaws. Doesn't always work too well. We kind of saw it last year with the football side of things with Ohio State, the Big Ten coming out and saying, you have to play 5 games to make the conference championship game. And of course, Ohio State and Michigan got canceled. Ohio State only played 4 games. The Big Ten goes, no, never mind. Ohio State can play. Like, oh yeah, that was pretty obvious, but that's where we are right now. And what was interesting to me, and I don't think this is because of COVID, I think this is just to maybe spark interest, but the Southland tournament or the Southland Conference has done kind of a preseason or conference opening tournament. Everybody's going to play 3 games. You win, you keep going. Essentially, you win all 3 games, you're the quote unquote champion. Doesn't really mean anything. But this might be something down the road that conferences have to go, look, everyone's taking 2 weeks off to get healthy. We're all flying to Vegas. We're all flying somewhere. We've got hotels ready to go. And it's going to be just kind of an AAU type situation. Now, that still has its own set because then it comes, well, if one team gets it, then more than likely everyone gets it. So once again, there's no perfect role or perfect idea. And I think the hardest part is, like you said, there is no science to this. I mean, in 3 months, we could be dealing with something else, some Omicron or whatever is next on the naming list, however they go with that. So the the worry I have is what we saw 2 years ago, and it is getting all the way through the season, getting a point. I look at San Diego State, where San Diego State lost their conference championship game, had a great year. They were going to be a 2 or 3 seed. And they go, you know what? We lost that game, but we're going to get a chance to prove it. March Madness. And then 48 hours later, it all came crashing down. I mean, that's tough. At least, some schools, 3 months ahead, okay, we shut things down. We're not going to the tournament. But, that's tough. And I worry about that. Now, once again, that's first world problems, kind of, uptown problems, if you will. We got to keep everyone healthy. The student athletes have to be taken care of first and foremost. And, as much as I want to see March Madness, you do have to kind of walk that tightrope of safety over, entertainment, let's be honest. So I think that's the hardest part is A, nobody really knows what the right answer is. And B, there are a lot of people who do think they know the right answer. But obviously don't. There's only one person out there who knows, and we don't know who that one person is. So I think the best thing that we can do, or at least college basketball can do, keep the kids healthy. I think you're going to see universities in the next week or two are just going to shut things down. Let's be honest. You're going to see some schools that, I was going through, and there were Mississippi Valley State and Prairie View A&M are a combined 0-26. With all due respect to those athletes, one breakout is probably going to shut things down. So, like I said, I don't know what the answer is, but I just hope we can get to March in a safe space. I don't think we're going to see fans again, and we might see an all Indiana or Indianapolis, whatever, bubble tournament. But I think for all college basketball fans, that is better than nothing. So it's going to be tough. But hopefully we're able to get to March Madness, but I would say it's 50-50 right now. Kind of a toss up right now, if you will. So
I would agree.
Yeah. Moving on to some of the things that have gone down on the court. We'll start as always with the rankings, the top 25 from the AP. Baylor remains the top team in the country after a big win over previously undefeated Iowa State. And then behind them, the top 7 are unchanged. The biggest faller is going to be Seton Hall. They dropped from 15 to 24. I think it got, it's a little tough. You lose drop 9 spots, losing to a good team like Villanova, but that's what they get. Providence does move up. They're the biggest movers of the week from 21 to 16. However, just a few nights ago, they got their doors blown off by a good Marquette team. So they'll probably come tumbling back down. And Colorado State, despite pretty much not playing almost a month, I think it went December 11th to January 4th or 3rd without playing a game. They finally got back on the floor, beat Air Force. They are still undefeated. They do remain at number 20. We kind of talked about that last week in terms of, is the AP or the voters going to start kind of punishing teams? We haven't really seen that. USC is another one. USC is right where they are. They're having some trouble. A lot of Pac-12 teams are, and they're staying where they are. So they're not being penalized as of yet. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts early? Not a whole lot of change, not a whole lot of surprises, but overall the top 25 here early January.
No, that no play thing is right now being favorable to Gonzaga and UCLA, holding at 4 and 5 right now in both spots, in both polls. And that's, again, I questioned that last week. How long can you let a team sit there when they're not even playing? At some point you have to, but I don't know mathematically how you go about that. I think the game this week, one of the games this week that was really surprising to me was Purdue. When Wisconsin went in and took care of business against Purdue, they had a young man, and my writing is terrible today. Johnny Danzas, I think is his name, had 37 of the Wisconsin 74 points, 27 of those points in the second half. The kid was just unconscious out there. And the other game that I liked was Kentucky had been rolling along. They've been showing good offense, nice power, just blowing the doors off of people. And LSU came in, figured out how to slow it down. LSU gets the win on that. So that was a good win. And so looking at the top 10, the team that I'd be concerned about if I was anybody in the top 10 is going to be Kansas. They're kind of like that Gonzaga spot right now. It's like nobody's really talking about them unless you're a big Kansas follower. But Kansas, they've got 3 guards. Their 3 guards are averaging 26, 16, and 10. They're shooting 40% from the 3-point. That's 3. So when you've got 3 guards that are doing that, you're dangerous. And so watch for Kansas. They're going to be around, and if there is a tournament, watch for them to be a Final Four shot. Definitely.
I agree, and Arizona's on that list for me as well. Very quietly, this was we'll call them a sleeping power. I mean, obviously, since Lute Olson has moved on, they've had some good teams, but it hasn't been that dominant West Coast, or I don't know where I consider Arizona on the West Coast, obviously not technically the coast, but if I can drive to you in a 5-hour span, you're in the West Coast. So they've always been that power, getting themselves back to that. And it's very ironic, you got Kansas and Arizona very quietly in the top 10. You never would say that. Normally if Kansas and Arizona are in the top 10, there's a lot of noise around this team. But I think right now, look, if you're a betting person and you like one of these teams, this is the time to hop on the, will they win the national championship, train, because I think the numbers are going to start coming down, especially as we get deeper into the conference year. And I think both of these teams have a chance to be a 1 seed. Probably not both. One of these two will get a 1 seed, and then the other will probably get a 2 seed unless something really goes haywire down the stretch. But yeah, overall, it's still a little early to be worried, talking seeding, things like that. But for the biggest part right now is, as you said, for Purdue, I mean, this was a team that was number 1 in the country just a few weeks ago, and now seems to be struggling. Yeah, they're a little lost right now. So, but speaking of, unfortunately, a little lost, we're going to be heading off. Normally, this would be the Gonzaga update, as Raider Jim somewhat alluded to. They haven't played in quite some time, so not a whole lot to report there. So we're going to pass it over to Raider Jim, who's going to give us the West Coast Conference rundown and what's going on really as a whole for that conference.
Yeah, I've been rattling trees and trying to find out what's really going on at Gonzaga, because I know they have missed their first 4 conference games. They were supposed to start against USD last week before the new year, and that didn't happen. They didn't get to play Loyola Marymount. And then they were supposed to play San Francisco tonight, and that didn't happen. And it sounds like they are definitely not going to be playing on Saturday. So, and they are not the only West Coast Conference team that's in this predicament. USD has not played, I don't think, since the beginning of December. Santa Clara is out again. BYU has been very fortunate, but now they are even questioning whether or not they're going to get to play their next game. The West Coast Conference is in a real bad state right now. The one team that was coming across unscathed was the University of San Francisco. And again, they were supposed to play Gonzaga tonight. And a lot of people had their eyes on that one, because they had not lost, or they had only lost once, but they were supposed to be challenging Gonzaga for the West Coast Conference title this year. And then the game got postponed. With that, they did what any good program would do, is like, well, we will play anybody. So they reached out to Loyola Chicago, got that game on the books, got that game scheduled for today. And that's the old watch what you wish for, because they beat USF.
Yeah.
They lost 79-74. It was a great game and they hung, but again, sometimes, to put it together too fast, it's a lot of stress on these kids. I get it. They're athletes, they want to play, and that's what they're in it for. But there comes a point to me where the excitement, the trade-off for the excitement and the opportunity to play, it goes against the mental and physical state of these kids. And they are kids. We got to keep saying that. They're kids, and you got to take care of them first. But still, they hung in there, and it was good. I'm glad they got to play. Hopefully everybody comes back from, I forget what venue they played in, but hopefully they're all safe and sound and back on the bus and on the plane real soon and get back to the Bay Area. You did mention one thing. You hit on Arizona, and that they have kind of like, wow, what happened from last year to this year? And all of a sudden, now they're in a top 10 program. You look back between 2000 and 2017, and you take any sideline picture from any Gonzaga game, and you will see Tommy Lloyd at the right hand of Mark Few. And Tommy Lloyd is the coach for Arizona right now. And I'm just real excited to see him having the success that he's having. And it's no surprise. And I can't wait to see Gonzaga go against Arizona somewhere down the road, because that's going to be the mentor and the student, if you will. And that's going to be great to see. For next week, it won't be, well, it's up to Brandon here. It would be either part of this podcast or it might be in addition to. We tentatively have commitment from the commissioner of the West Coast Conference to come on and give us a few minutes and talk about the challenges of COVID. Originally, it was just going to be the challenges of COVID last year, but now it's going to be the challenges of COVID last year, this year, and not just as it pertains to men's basketball, but to athletics in general across the West Coast Conference, because now we're getting into the winter and spring sports even. You know, what's this going to do to baseball, soccer, rowing, things like that?
I agree. It'll definitely be dropping, when we get that, we'll drop that and probably see how the interview goes. If it's 5-10 minutes, we'll drop it into a pod. If it's 15 plus, we'll do it by itself, but keep an eye on that. We'll make sure to, pop that in the title as well, so everyone knows. The interesting thing for, when you're San Francisco or USF and you then bring in Loyola Chicago, not only, are you playing a very good team, I think it went to either the Sweet 16, maybe even the Elite Eight last year, another great run from a very, very good program. But this isn't just going and grabbing another conference opponent and moving them up the schedule. This is, you got film on them, yes, but you don't know a lot about this team. Now, for example, the perfect little transition into San Diego State. San Diego State got a win over UNLV last week, right before the Rebels ended up going on their little COVID break, if you will. Right. They move, and then Nevada was supposed to come in on Saturday to play San Diego State. Nevada and Wyoming have both taken breaks, if you will. Colorado State was going to play Wyoming this Saturday as well. Obviously, with Wyoming taking a break, that's not going to happen. So the Mountain West has called in and said, look, Colorado State, instead of March 1st and the second to last game of the season, you're going to San Diego State now. And Brian Dutcher has said it's difficult. It's really hard, 48 hours to get ready for an opponent, obviously, like Colorado State. Same thing for Colorado State here. But my point being, at least there is, look, we have film from last year or 2 years ago when we played these guys. San Francisco has to probably go back a ways to find film that even a West Coast Conference team played the Illinois of Chicago. So for them to have to kind of face an unknown opponent rather than like for San Diego State facing a familiar opponent just on short notice or at a different time. So another factor, obviously we're going to get to the point, this game will be at San Diego State this weekend. And it was announced 2 or 3 days ago, and I'm sure there are a multitude of universities doing this. I just didn't have the time to go in and take a full list, but San Diego State students have gone back to now remote learning. So, in terms of the crowd that will be there, I'm not saying everyone went home, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who live in Orange County, who live in the greater California area that said, you know what, if you're going to put me on Zoom, I'm going to go home, to mom and dad's house and get that there instead of just hanging out in the dorms, blah, blah, blah. So, a little bit less students to be there, something to just keep an eye on. It's going to be a huge game regardless, nationally ranked. I'm sure it's going to be fun. I'm pretty sure it's national TV. I know it's CBS. It might be CBS Sports Network, but I think it's big CBS. Anyways, after that UNLV win, once again, Matt Bradley, this guy is a bona fide leader for this team. He's a fifth-year senior, transfer out of Cal, and another fantastic game against UNLV. Goes put 17 in with 7 rebounds. Gets some help from Kashad Johnson, who gets another double-double of 10 points, 11 rebounds. Really good stuff. Once again, though, I still am just looking for someone to be that number 2 to Matt Bradley. They're going to need that this weekend when they face a very good, very experienced Colorado State team. Now, looking ahead, as I said, Colorado State coming in on Saturday. After that, it's kind of all up in the air right now. Fresno State was supposed to come in, not going to happen. So there's a lot going on, or at least behind the scenes, a lot of shuffling. Like I said, but as of right now, we're recording 6th of January. It's a Thursday. We're 48 hours away from this game going off, and we seem to be all green light forward. After that for San Diego State, they're probably going to have to wait on the Mountain West to either send them opponent or, we'll get that all figured out. But like I said, big game Saturday. Hopefully everything continues to go, and it's not I get a text from Raider Jim in the morning that the game's been canceled because
Right.
he is. It's always seems to be like the game that we talked about has just officially been canceled. But it's going to be tough for San Diego State on Saturday. It's going to be a great game. Make sure you check it out. A lot of good games on Saturday, but that's we got there for the West Coast Conference report and the San Diego State report. Moving on to, as always, our player report. We always have pick one of the top players in the country or just someone that, is well known around the country and kind of give them a little bit of a profile. Well, we're going to the small schools this year, or this week, I should say. It's Max Abmas, a guard out of Oral Roberts. It's a kid who led the country in scoring last year, and then was the leader on the team that was really last year's big Cinderella story. 15 seed. They go on. They beat Ohio State. They beat Florida, and very nearly beat Arkansas in the Sweet 16. But they did end up going down in the Sweet 16. Max Abmas is the guy who changes all that. Shoots 43% from behind the arc for the last 3 seasons, a large sample size as well. I will say at the next level, like most players at this level, you're going to have to improve defensively. It's not going to be the end all be all. If you can average 20 a night, the defense will be okay and they'll look past it. He's going to have to do that. And I'll tell you this right now, for my money, this kid is the best small school scorer we've seen since Steph Curry. I'm not saying he's Steph Curry, but in terms of ability to score and shoot the ball at a small school, like I said, he is right there with Steph Curry at this level. Next level, that's another story. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the 6'1" guard out of Oral Roberts?
Yeah, it's funny because it's kind of like me when I tell people I'm 5'7" and I'm not even near it if I'm standing on a box. But 6'1", I've seen him listed at 6'1". You look at another page, they have 5'11", so 6'1", he's got his shoes on. When you come from a smaller division, if you will, or a smaller conference, people do not take you seriously. And I say that being a Gonzaga fan, where people would go, Gonzaga, they're not that. The Summit League or the Summit Conference, you got the Denver Pioneers, you got the North Dakota State Bison, and you've got Oral Roberts. And just by virtue of it's the Oral Roberts University, people just tend to not take you seriously, but then they come out and do what they did last year. And again, he was instrumental in what happened. At 5'11", 6'1", whatever, the kid can shoot. And if you look at his numbers between just the 2020 season and the 2021 season, wow, you talk about vast improvement and being a leader out on the floor. I think of these players now. Adam Morrison was a little bigger, but Adam Morrison, when he was up there fighting for national scoring leader back in his senior year at Gonzaga, but again, he went to Gonzaga. So who is this guy? And luckily, they made their big run in the tournament as they had been accustomed to doing. This guy, Abrams, has actually been compared to Jimmer Fredette, who was the other guy that Adam Morrison would compete against for the scoring title. Now, I think he's a fantastic player. My concern is his size. Reminds me more of a Dan Dickau, who is a great shooter, but he was a small guy. Yeah. He was another one of those. I met him after a couple of games, and it's like, Dan Dickau, 6'2". It's like, no, he's not. there's no way. I should be doing this if he's 6'2". And but no, and that's to take nothing away from these guys. They're good players. And you go out, I don't care what conference you're playing for. Anybody else who wants to criticize or downplay it because he plays for Oral Roberts Golden Eagles, let me tell you, you go out there and lead the nation in scoring. If it's that easy to do, or you're going to say that doesn't have the caliber, and then he goes out and puts up numbers against Ohio State, against Florida. No, I'm sorry. He's a good player, and NBA is going to be tough. I think he's going to have a great career though over in Europe.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he does make that jump. And I will throw the caveat out there. I know, it technically Gonzaga is a mid-major because but let's be honest, Gonzaga is a big school. I'm more thinking even BYU, San Diego State, I think are still kind of that mid-major, this small school kind of, like you said, you probably had to Google. I know I did, where Oral Roberts conference was in, like you said. You don't have to do that for San Diego State, UNLV, BYU. A little bit kind of that mid-major level. This is definitely the lower, let's call them Google schools. You have to kind of Google where they are and things like that. But yeah, and the other part about this too is he is only a junior. So there is no, gun to your head. This is your last year. Obviously, I'm sure in his mind, let's get to the league and begin his big league career, or at least his NBA career. But it doesn't have to happen this year. He can take another year if he does want to come back to Oral Roberts, and who knows. But I mean, even in this case, this year still not over for them. They're having a good year. I think it'll be a little bit tall task for them to get back to the Sweet 16. But as we kind of talked about in the beginning of the show, the March Madness is let's just get through the day before, let alone 2 months from now.
Let's get to February and see how we're looking.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get to next week, and if we're still talking college basketball, we're happy, we're excited. But perfect little segue into the top games coming up for this week, and Saturday, as always, going to be jam-packed with some really good basketball games. Starting in the morning, you got Kansas heading to Lubbock to take on Texas Tech. The game I talked about earlier, Colorado State at San Diego State. A big SEC matchup with Tennessee heading to Baton Rouge to take on LSU. Massive West Coast Conference game. We knock on wood. Hopefully this game goes off without a hitch. St. Mary's at BYU. That will also be Saturday night. And then we switch over to Tuesday. 3 big games on Tuesday. Texas Tech again. This time they'll be on the road at Baylor. Iowa State will head to Kansas, and the Iron Bowl, but on the hardwood. 2 really good teams in basketball. Not, 2 definite football schools, but they're having very good years on the hardwood. Auburn heads to Alabama. Raider Jim, I feel like that St. Mary's BYU game is going to be, the one that you're looking forward to the most because it hits home. But which ones are you looking forward to, and any others that may have gone under the radar?
Real interesting here, and I get it. The conference they play in is tough, but Texas Tech is going to play Kansas, and then a couple of days later they're going to play Baylor, and then in 2 weeks they're going to play Kansas again. It was like, did they just piss off the schedule makers or what? Because this is the number 25 team, and they are going to have to fight with everything they've got to maintain that top 25 ranking. I won't be surprised if they don't pressure Baylor just a little bit. Do they get the win? I don't know. But do I think they put a good game against Baylor? Only thing I don't like is that it is at Baylor, but still, I think that's going to be a good game. I'm really looking forward to that one. And I'm also looking forward to the Iowa State and Kansas game. Yeah. That's going to be good too.
Well, Iowa State's the other team that has, I believe they were 5 of their next 6 games going back to the Baylor game. They had 6 games. 5 of them were against nationally ranked opponents. So, it's kind of like last year in the Big Ten or 2 years ago in the Big Ten, where it seemed like half of the conference was not only ranked in the top 25, but they were top 15. And it was just an absolute, you just look around and go, how is anyone going to get a 1 seed? Because, you're kind of beating each other up. And that's kind of where we are there. But it's going to be really interesting in that Big 12 for, Texas Tech, because they can look at this and go, look, if we can, kind of split these next 2 weeks, go 3-3 or 2-2, we'll feel pretty good about that. It's the problem of, if you go over, and then all of a sudden that record gets to 8-7 and you go, like we're going to need to start getting rolling heading into March. And I don't think any team in the country wants to head into conference tournament season with A, the COVID situation, and B, being on the quote unquote bubble. knowing, oh, you got to win 2 tournament games. That's going to be tough because you might not even be able to field a team. Let's be honest. This is not going away in 2 months' time. So it's going to be really interesting. Myself, obviously, that Colorado State San Diego State game, really looking forward to. But the St. Mary's BYU is another one. I think we've talked about it. Essentially, the heir apparent, or maybe not heir apparent, but the team that will probably be someone that we can expect to at least challenge Gonzaga. Both will, don't get me wrong, but more than likely this is going to be kind of the second place game, if you will. So
yeah, before the COVID stuff hit hard, I mean, there was talk that it was definitely going to be BYU, St. Mary's, Gonzaga, probably likely to make it into the tournament just by virtue of their season records. And then San Francisco started playing as well as they did. So then the talk was, wow, this conference might actually put 4 teams into the tournament. Still could happen, but now it's all again with the COVID thing hanging around. We just have to wait and see who can stay healthy.
Amen. And that's kind of how we are right now in life, not just on the basketball court, but personal lives, professional lives, everything. Everything is kind of based on health and well-being of all. Which I guess it always probably should have been that, but this is a little more different. But that is all we have for you today here on In the Paint, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Raider Jim, any final thoughts as we dive in? We get ready to, start to dive into 2022 and hope that it's a little bit nicer to us in the last few years.
Yeah, again, I just can't emphasize enough, and just, again, repeat it. You're hearing it all over. You're reading it on the news. You're hearing it on the news. But this COVID thing is serious. It's not going away. Do what you can. Be respectful to your families and those around you, regardless of what your position is. One of my neighbors is a nurse at Children's Hospital, and she works with the infants. And she says, where I work, the babies don't get COVID. She said, but the parents do.
Yeah.
And she says, and they come in, and then we hear the stories about some of them and these family get-togethers. She says, we're testing people. She goes, I think she threw the number out there. She herself had administered like 75 tests in one day because the family members come in to be with the little babies, and oh my gosh. So take it serious, folks, and just we'll get past it, and it'll pass before you know it. And sometimes you do just have to inconvenience yourself in the first world that we live in.
Yeah, amen. And I tell you what, for all those new parents out there, I could only imagine how tough it is to have a newborn and then have to bring on a COVID situation and isolate from that newborn. That's tough. So yeah, it's definitely out there. It's not going away anytime soon. But like you said, I think if we do everything that we need to, hopefully, we can at least start moving onto the plus side of the field. We'll use that football analogy, get past the 50 and start hopefully working into the red zone, and we score a touchdown, not kick a field goal. But thank you all again so much for listening to this episode of In the Paint, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench, but we are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon. Take care.